The storm had a way of swallowing sound, turning the quiet outskirts of the city into a trembling blur of water, darkness, and wind. It crashed against the windshield of Denise Carter's old white pickup, like a living thing, angry, relentless, and unashamed of how small it made everything else feel. Denise gripped the steering wheel with both hands. Knuckles white, eyes strained from a 12-hour shift that had already drained every ounce of strength she had. Her uniform clung to her skin, still damp from a pot of coffee that had splashed across her apron hours earlier. The tired neon lights of the diner still flashed in her mind. Blue, red, like a heartbeat she couldn't shut off. She was 28 years old, overworked, underpaid, always exhausted, and somehow still trying to believe things might get better. Yet tonight, the world felt heavier than usual. Her heater sputtered, blowing more noise and warmth. She could see her breath when she exhaled. Rent was due in 3 days, and her wallet held exactly $34. But she pushed down the anxiety the same way she always did, swallowing it like an ache that never fully went away. Then she saw it, a black luxury sedan. So sleek it didn't belong anywhere near her neighborhood, sat crooked on the shoulder of the lonely road. Hazard lights blinked like tired fireflies. Steam curled out from under the hood in thin, desperate ribbons. Denise slowed. Her headlights revealed an elderly man standing beside the car, coat drenched, hands trembling as he held onto the fender for balance. His white hair was plastered to his forehead. His shoes were soaked. He didn't seem like a man caught in a storm. He looked like a man swallowed by one. For a second, she hesitated. This was the kind of night people locked their doors and drove faster. The kind of night that tested whether kindness was still something the world remembered. But then she noticed his fingers fumble with a phone that clearly had no signal out here. His shoulders shook, not from fear, but from cold that seemed to seep straight into his bones. She pulled over. Rain hit her window in sheets as she rolled it down halfway. "You all right out here?" she called, trying to sound confident despite the nerves curling in her stomach. The man turned, squinting through the downpour. His voice cracked when he spoke. "My car's dead. Toll lines are busy. And I think I got lost." He was old enough to be someone's grandfather, old enough that the storm shouldn't have been his battle tonight. Denise sighed, reached across the seat, and unlocked the passenger door. "You'll freeze before help comes. Get in." He hesitated, because trust was a dangerous currency these days, but then he nodded weakly and climbed into the truck, drenched from head to toe. Water pooled on the torn leather seat. The heater groaned as she turned it up. It wasn't much, but warmth began to push back the chill. "I'm Denise," she said. "Henry," he replied, voice small. "Henry Weston." As she drove slowly toward the city lights, he told her bits of his story, just enough to fill the silence. A late meeting, a wrong turn, a storm that caught him off guard. But she noticed things he didn't say. The exhaustion behind his words, the loneliness in his eyes, the way he kept thanking her as if gratitude itself hurt. She didn't pry. She never did. She simply listened, because sometimes that was the last kindness people had left to give. By the time they reached her small apartment, the rain had softened, but the weight of the night lingered. She gave him soup, a towel, her only blanket. He fell asleep on her couch. And for the first time all day, the storm outside didn't feel as loud as the one inside her chest. She didn't know yet, but this simple act, this quiet moment of compassion, would shake her entire world when morning came. The rain had thinned to a cold drizzle by dawn, the kind that clung to morning like a leftover argument. Denise stepped out of her apartment building, her breath visible in the icy air. Her shoes were already wet from a puddle she hadn't noticed, and her uniform, still wrinkled from drying overnight, felt stiff against her skin. She touched her pocket, feeling the folded note Henry had left behind. "Thank you for seeing me as a person." It warmed her more than the weak sunrise did. But warmth didn't shorten the walk to the diner, and it certainly didn't change the time. She reached the hill 3 blocks from work, legs burning from the sprint. Her chest tightened as she checked her phone. She was 10 minutes late. 10 minutes might as well have been an hour to her manager, Steve Harlow. The diner door chimed as she pushed it open, and a familiar smell of bacon grease and bitter Coffee hit her like a wall. Customers filled every booth. Pressed shirts, office chatter, clinking utensils. It was a kind of morning rush where one wrong move could topple everything. Unfortunately, Denise was that wrong move. Steve stood behind the counter, face red, sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked up the moment she entered, lips curling into a smile that wasn't a smile at all. "Well, look who finally decided to join us," he boomed. Conversation slowed. A few customers turned their heads. Denise swallowed hard and hurried to hang her coat. "I'm sorry, sir." Save it." Steve grabbed a receipt pad and slapped it onto the counter with unnecessary force. "We got the owner visiting today. The first time in years. And you strolling like you're taking a morning walk?" The line cooks paused. The dishwasher peeked from the back. The room tightened around her. Denise's voice softened. "I had to help someone last night. An older. Good deeds don't pay rent." He cut in sharply, raising his voice enough for customers to hear. "They don't get breakfast out faster. They don't keep this place running." A few customers chuckled. Someone whispered, "Harsh," but no one stepped in. Denise kept her gaze fixed on the floor. "Please, Mr. Harlow, you know I don't make a habit of this. I've never been late." "Doesn't matter." He crossed his arms, leaning in. "You're unreliable, and I don't tolerate unreliable." The words hit her like a slap. "Hand over your apron." Her breath caught. For years she had worked here. Holidays, double shifts, night storms, sick days she never took. She had held this diner together more times than Steve would ever admit. Now, he wanted to make an example out of her. Her hands trembled as she untied her apron. She folded it neatly, because dignity was all she had left, and placed it on the counter without looking up. A woman in the corner booth whispered, "She's the sweetest one here," but even that kindness felt too late. When Denise turned to leave, Steve stepped closer and muttered, "Perfect timing. The owner will be here any minute. Last thing I need is a charity case making the place look sloppy." Charity case. The words burned more than the cold outside. The bell above the door jingled behind her as she stepped back into the drizzle. The sky was a flat, bruised gray. She pulled her coat tight, but nothing stopped the sting that crawled through her chest. She had done the right thing the night before. She would do it again. But right didn't pay bills. Right didn't feed hope. As she reached the corner, something caught her eye. A black sedan rolled slowly past the diner. The window lowered just a fraction. Henry Weston watched her walk away. Careful, quiet, unreadable, the note she'd given him resting on the seat beside him. He said nothing. But the storm inside him began to rise, because now he knew exactly where she worked, and exactly what had just been taken from her. The lunch rush came with a strange, buzzing energy that none of the staff understood. It wasn't just that the rain had stopped or that sunlight now spilled in thin stripes across the chrome countertops. It was the tension, the thick, uneasy kind that settled in a room when everyone knew something important was about to happen. Steve Harlow felt it most. He straightened the napkin holders for the third time, wiped the spotless counter again, adjusted the same ketchup bottle twice. He kept glancing at the clock, like each second was a countdown. Today, the elusive owner, the man whose name was on every paycheck but whose face was unknown to every employee, was finally coming to inspect the diner. And Steve needed everything to be perfect. He didn't know that the man he'd insulted, bragged about landing, and hoped to impress had already arrived in town last night, soaked, tired, and helped by the woman he'd just humiliated. He didn't know that fate was walking toward him with polished shoes and quiet fury. At exactly 12:30, the bell over the diner door chimed. Once, sharp, clean, the entire room paused. A tall man stepped inside wearing a dark tailored coat, his silver hair combed neatly despite the wind. His posture carried a quiet authority that didn't need to announce itself. His eyes scanned the room, observant, calm, and dangerously sharp. Henry Weston. Steve's face snapped into a bright, desperate grin. "Mr. Weston." "Sir." "Welcome to Harlow's Diner." "Well, your diner, of course. I've been preparing all morning. Everything is spotless, running smooth as butter." Staff exchanged looks. No one had ever seen Steve this eager. Henry nodded slowly, barely acknowledging him. His eyes traveled across the booths, the counter, the walls, and then to the empty spot near the register. The one place missing its steady, familiar presence. He frowned. "Where's the young woman from this morning?" Steve blinked. "Pardon?" "Denise Carter," Henry clarified. "She worked here yesterday, yes?" "Oh, her." Steve let out a dismissive laugh. "Had to let her go today. Chronically late. Poor attitude. Not good for business." Murmurs rippled through the staff. Henry's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I see." Steve didn't notice. He was too busy gesturing to the spotless counter. "But not to worry, sir. I take my job seriously. I run a tight ship. Only keep the best." Henry turned to the cook. "Is that true?" The young man swallowed hard. "No, sir. Denise was the best we had. She trained half of us, and she was never late until today." The room froze. Steve's smile wobbled. "People exaggerate. I assure you." Henry faced him fully, voice level but heavy enough to silence the diner. "You fired her this morning?" "Yes," Steve said. "For cause." "Call her back. Immediately." The color drained from Steve's cheeks. "Sir, there's no need." "Call her back." Henry's voice carried the weight of a verdict. 5 minutes later, the bell chimed again. Denise stepped inside, hesitant, confused, still in her wrinkled uniform. She looked around, unsure why she'd been summoned. When her eyes found Henry, she gasped softly. He gave her a warm, gentle nod. "Miss Carter," he began, "last night you saw a man alone in a storm. You didn't ask who he was or what he could give you. You just saw a human being who needed help." Whispers spread like sparks. Henry continued, "You showed me what dignity looks like, what compassion feels like, and what this diner should represent." Steve shifted uncomfortably, already sensing the future closing in on him. Henry turned to the staff. "Effective immediately, Denise Carter is reinstated. Not as a waitress." The room held its breath. As co-manager of this diner, Denise's knees nearly buckled. Tears pooled but didn't fall. She pressed a hand over her mouth, overwhelmed. Steve sputtered, "You can't be serious." "She..." Henry cut him off with a look that could freeze an ocean. "You wanted to impress me today, Mr. Harlow. And you succeeded, just not the way you hoped." The staff clapped, softly at first, then louder, relief pouring through the room. Denise stared at Henry, voice trembling. "But why me?" Henry smiled faintly. "Because you gave me kindness when you had almost nothing left. And I intend to return that kindness with respect." Outside, the rain-soaked world glittered under new sunlight. Inside, everything had changed. For a few weeks, the diner breathed easier. You could feel in the way the staff moved. Lighter, freer, as if the air itself had been scrubbed clean of fear. Under Denise's calm leadership, everything ran smoother. Customers lingered longer. Tips were better. The atmosphere shifted from weary routine to something almost warm. Henry visited often, sometimes quietly observing from his corner booth, sometimes stepping in with suggestion or two. He never interfered. He simply watched the woman whose kindness had rewritten his life, proud of the stability blooming under her care. But stability has a way of stirring up old resentments. And Steve Harlow felt every inch of that shift like a splinter burrowing under the skin. He didn't shout anymore, didn't bark orders. He smiled, that taut, sour smile that cracked at the edges, and did whatever Denise asked him. But beneath that mask, bitterness fermented like spoiled milk. The staff sensed it. The new waitress avoided the prep station when he was near. The dishwasher flinched when he walked in. Even the cook kept his distance. But no one said anything. They'd all endured Steve long before Denise had risen. They didn't know resentment this deep doesn't just fade. It festers. One night, after closing, Denise sat at the counter with a calculator and the day's register totals. Numbers made sense to her, neat, clean, predictable. So when she noticed a shortage of $50, she checked again. Then again, the numbers didn't change. She whispered to herself, "That's odd." She didn't jump to conclusions, but an uneasy weight settled in her stomach. It could have been a mistake, a miscount, a misplaced tip. She left a note for herself and balanced it again the next morning. Another shortage, different amount, same drawer. Her heart squeezed painfully. Someone was trying to make her look incompetent. Worse, dishonest. She didn't accuse anyone. She simply handed the numbers to Henry in his office. He studied her face before he looked at the paper. "You're sure?" "Yes," she said softly. "And I think it's deliberate." Henry didn't question her. Not once. "Then we'll find out." He called in someone quietly, a plain-clothed investigator with a calm stare and a laptop bag. Together, in the dim back office, they installed 2 small cameras. One facing the registers, the other pointed subtly at the prep counter. No one knew except Henry and Denise. Days passed. Every morning she braced for another shortage. Every night she feared she'd find one. And every time she crossed paths with Steve, he gave her that hollow smile that didn't reach his eyes. Then came the night that broke everything open. It was raining again, a hard, relentless storm that hammered against the diner windows. Denise left early to handle an emergency delivery, juggling invoices and supplier calls. Steve volunteered to close up, voice dripping syrupy politeness. The camera caught it all. He waited until the door shut behind her. He waited until the dishwasher turned up the music in the back. He waited until he was alone at the front counter. Then he approached her register. He glanced over his shoulder twice, opened the drawer, slid out a stack of bills, carefully pocketed them. Then he removed her count slip and replaced it with a forged one. Identical handwriting, identical format, numbers swapped to match the theft. He even chuckled under his breath. "Let's see you talk your way out of this." His voice was oily, satisfied, triumphant. The camera caught every word. The next morning, Henry called a mandatory staff meeting. Denise stood by his side, hands clasped tightly behind her back. The staff gathered in a tense circle while Steve leaned against the counter, smirking like he already knew what was coming. The investigator clicked play on the laptop. The room went silent. There was Steve, unmistakable, stealing from a drawer, adjusting the slip, grinning at his own cruelty. The evidence was irrefutable, brutally clear. Steve's face drained of color. "That's edited," he shouted. "She set me up. She..." Henry cut him off with a voice colder than winter rain. "You framed the woman who saved me. You tried to destroy her character in my business. And you look proud doing it." 2 officers stepped quietly inside. The handcuffs clicked. Steve's shouting echoed off the walls as they dragged him out, but no one met his eyes. No one reached out. No one spoke up for him. Denise didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply closed her eyes for a moment, exhaling a storm she'd been holding inside. When she opened them again, Henry was watching her with something like admiration. "You handled all of this with grace," he said quietly. Most people would have screamed. She shook her head. "Some storms you just stand through." Outside, rain streaked down the windows. Inside, justice had finally arrived. The streetlights were faint and flickering, their glow swallowed by the kind of darkness that seemed to press inward. Denise walked home slowly, her hands tucked into the sleeves of her sweater. It had been another long day of searching, another day of polite rejections, tight smiles, and "we'll call you" promises no one ever meant. Her shoes were worn down, her hope thinner still. By the time she pushed open the door to her apartment building, exhaustion dragged behind her like a shadow. She climbed the stairs step by step, each one heavier than the last. At her door, she paused, leaning her forehead against the wood before finally turning the key. The room was dim, quiet, too quiet. She flipped on the light. Everything was as she left it. The small table, the chipped mug drying on the counter, the stack of job applications on the couch. But something felt shifted, a pressure in the air, a presence. She took a hesitant step forward. Then she saw it. A black umbrella leaned neatly against the wall, a pair of polished shoes on the mat, and beside her folded apron, the one she had left at the diner and never taken back, rested a single crisp envelope. Her heartbeat stalled. Someone else was in the room. Before she could move, a voice drifted from the shadows near the window. "You shouldn't keep your curtains open at night." She jumped back, hand flying to her chest. Henry stepped fully into the light, not the fragile, shaken man she found slumped on the curb, not the weary traveler with trembling hands. This Henry was composed, steady, clean-shaven, dressed in a dark coat that fit him too well for a man who supposedly had nothing. His eyes held her for a long moment, searching, grateful, and something else she couldn't place. "Mr. Weston?" she breathed out. "Henry," he corrected softly. She swallowed, startled and confused all at once. "W, what are you doing here? How did you—" "You helped me," he said simply. "More than you know. But you can't just come into someone's apartment." He nodded once. "You're right, and I apologize. I just needed to see you, to thank you properly." He stepped closer, but gently, like approaching a frightened animal. He held up his hands to show he meant no harm. "I found your address from the note you left in my coat," he explained. "You wrote your name. The diner gave me the rest." Denise's stomach twisted. I don't like that." "I understand," he said quietly. "I'll respect your boundaries. I just needed to return something first." He gestured toward the envelope on the table. She approached it slowly, eyes not leaving his. When she picked it up, her fingers brushed the seal, embossed with crest she didn't recognize. "What is this?" "An opportunity," he said. Her brows knit. "I don't." "Open it." Her hand trembled as she slid her finger under the seal. Inside was a single document, heavy paper, elegant script. "Employment offer, Weston Holdings." Her breath hitched. "I don't understand." Henry's voice softened. "You saved me the night you found me. You didn't ask who I was. You didn't treat me like a burden or a cautionary tale. You treated me like a human being. And that is rare." Denise shook her head. "But why would you give me something like this?" "Because I watched what happened at that diner," he said, anger flickering under the calm. "I watched him humiliate you, fire you, call you a charity case." She stiffened, shame curling in her chest. Henry stepped closer, his voice low. "You are not a charity case, Denise. You are dignity. You are kindness. You are resilience. And people like you deserve doors that open, not one slammed in your face." A silence stretched between them. Fragile, trembling, charged. Denise felt her throat tighten. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything tonight," he murmured. "Just know this offer is real, and it's yours. Whether you take it or not, that's up to you." He picked up the umbrella and walked toward the door. Before stepping out, he paused. "Denise?" "Yes." "Next time you help someone, don't lose your job over it." His smile was soft. "True." Then he left, closing the door quietly behind him. Denise stared at the envelope in her trembling hands, her heart racing. Was this fate? Kindness returning? Or had she just stepped into a world she wasn't ready for? The morning after Henry's visit felt unreal, like she'd stepped into someone else's life. Denise sat at her small kitchen table, the employment letter spread open in front of her. The elegant script, the embossed crest, the salary, all of it felt impossibly out of reach. People like her didn't walk into places like Weston Holdings. People like her survived. They didn't rise. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Take your time." "H." She exhaled softly, leaning back in the chair. She had known him for one night, one strange, fragile human night, and yet he had shifted the ground beneath her feet. But opportunities that big came with shadows just as large. Questions, doubts, fears. She decided she needed air. Weston Holdings towered above the city like a polished blade. Glass, steel, intimidating and breathtaking all at once. Denise stood across the street, clutching her bag. People in suits moved quickly in and out of the building, purpose in every step. She didn't feel like she belonged there. She almost turned back. Then a sleek black car pulled up to the entrance. The driver stepped out and opened the rear door. Henry Weston emerged, not the broken man from the street, not the gentle man in her apartment, But the CEO, every inch of him, he spotted her immediately, and he smiled. Not the PR smile, not the polite executive smile, the human one. He crossed the street toward her. "I was hoping you'd come," he said. She swallowed. "I haven't decided yet." "You don't need to decide right now." He gestured toward a small cafe beside the building. "Walk with me." They sat at a corner table. Henry removed his gloves, placed them neatly beside his cup, and looked at her with quiet sincerity. "There's something I need to tell you," he began. Her chest tightened. "I wasn't just wandering the night you found me," he said. "I was running. I'd just come from a board meeting that didn't go the way they hoped." "What happened?" "My father built Weston Holdings from the ground up. After he died, the board expected me to be just like him, cold, efficient, unbreakable." He looked down at his hands. "But I'm not him, and sometimes that weighs heavier than I'd like to admit." Denise listened, unsure where this was going. "That night," he continued, "I left the office after an argument. I walked for hours. I didn't even realize it was raining. I just broke." He lifted his gaze. "And you found me in the middle of it. You didn't know my name. You didn't care about my title. You saw a person in pain, and you stayed. You talked to me like I mattered." His voice softened. "That's why I made the offer, Denise. Not out of pity, not out of debt, but because I need people like you in my company. People who lead with humanity, not fear." Her throat tightened. "But what if I fail?" she whispered. "What if you don't?" he countered. He slid a second envelope across the table. "This isn't a contract," he said. "It's a starting position. A simple one. Entry level. No pressure. No spotlight. See who we are. Let us see who you are. If it's not for you, you walk away. No strings attached." Something inside her chest loosened. "Why are you doing this?" she asked quietly. Henry leaned back, studying her with a gaze that held layers she couldn't yet read. "Because the world keeps rewarding the wrong people," he said. "And I'm trying to change that." She held his eyes. The weight of every hardship, every humiliation, every struggle pressed against her, and then lifted. "I'll do it," she whispered. Henry smiled, the soft, quiet smile she had seen the first night. "Good," he said. "And Denise?" "Yes." "You're not stepping into my world." He stood, gently placing a hand over the envelope. "You're stepping into yours." 2 months later, Denise walked into Weston Holdings with a new badge hanging around her neck and a confidence she had fought hard to earn. She wasn't a charity case. She wasn't a nobody. She wasn't someone life kept stepping on. She was the girl who helped a stranger in the rain. And the world, finally, helped her back. As she entered the lobby, Henry passed by with his team. Their eyes met for a brief moment, warm and wordless. Not fate, not romance, not destiny. Just two lives intertwined by a single act of kindness, and the many consequences it carried. The end or the beginning.